You are listening to the Lanterns Radio Network, where Americans come together to illuminate the truth. Turn it up loud and proud until the knob breaks off. Lanterns, illuminating the truth.
Good afternoon, everybody. You're listening to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. I'm Matt Holloway. Got a heck of a show lined up for you today. Some really crazy things happening this week. President Donald Trump has released his new budget, which makes what some are calling savage cuts to domestic spending while increasing military spending by $58 billion, which I think is long overdue. Also, Senators John McCain and Rand Paul mix it up on the Senate floor. We're going to talk to you a little bit about staying awake in a world that wants you to fall asleep and fall in line. All that coming up this hour on the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Radio Network.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
Hello, everybody. I'm Matt Holloway. You're listening to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Today is March 16th in the year of our Lord 2017, and the Odyssey continues. Living in the Trumpian age. Today, President Donald Trump revealed that he seeks a big defense spending boost and cuts to various agencies all over the government. And it's a $1.15 trillion budget proposal. This coming from the Lanterns.Buzz news desk, originally from Fox News. It's the budget blueprint called America First, and included deep cuts to foreign aid. And I do stand corrected, the $54 billion 10% boost for the military is the largest since President Ronald Reagan's Pentagon buildup of the 1980s. So are we looking at basically a castrata Reaganomics by way of Trumponomics, where we're taking away so much from domestic spending and dumping toward military spending to stimulate that trickle-down economy? Is that the direction that we're going here? It seems like it's possible. It really does seem like it's possible. But the budget blueprint itself is a gigantic document, so I'm going to take you through just a couple of the highlights today. It makes a large down payment on the border wall, an immediate $1.4 billion to the border wall, with another $2.6 billion planned in the 2018 budget. But it goes for the throat when it comes for a lot of programs that conservatives like you and me would love to see hit the shredder. NPR, gone. NPR's toast. Finally. The Center for Public Broadcast, out of here. PBS, pack it up. Looks like you're going to have to do a couple more donation drives in order to make that happen. And to be perfectly honest, I haven't really been thrilled with Sesame Street since I was like 5. They really got very, very progressive and very, very political with their messaging, and I think they over-politicized it, and as such, were the instruments of their own downfall. I mean, of course they're going to hit the chopping block first when you have just hardcore social engineering happening on Sesame Street. That's a topic for another show. But a lot of really good things coming through with this budget. And White House Budget Director Mick Mulvaney was quoted saying, "This is a hard power budget, not a soft power budget." So this is going to go to Capitol Hill, and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, not one of my favorite guys in the world, is already calling this devastating to the middle class. Now, I'm afraid Chuck wouldn't know middle class if it jumped up and bit him in the neck. And suddenly I sound like I'm writing for Twilight. That's kind of creepy. But Senator Chuck Schumer really doesn't know the least thing about the middle class. I mean, we're talking about a relatively wealthy man here, and a relatively wealthy New Yorker. Now, growing up in Jersey, yeah, I realize I might turn off anybody who's from New York. Don't anybody call K.E. Dean. She comes from upstate. She'll yell at me. But we really need to put this into perspective here. We're taking away from programs that are at best described as optional, okay? We have important things on the table right now, like medical care. We have this Obamacare Light / Trump Care / Ryan Care that's going to get put through one way or another. It's going to go to the negotiating table. I myself want a clean repeal and then handle the problem, but the way it's going to end up happening is it's going to get negotiated. And Paris Prokopis, who I'm probably butchering last name on, he's on our Patriot Radio, and I listened to him twice this week because he was also a guest on Defenders of American Exceptionalism, and he described it as having to negotiate up from nothing, and he's completely accurate, but there's going to be negotiation there. We're looking at a government that's taking it upon itself to not only provide defense, but to also provide medical care for its citizenry. So I'm sorry. Some things are going to hit the wood chipper. There are a couple of programs that are ancillary, that are extra. And one of those big extras, foreign aid. Big hit being sustained by foreign aid. It looks like the U.S. Agency for International Development is going to hit a 28% reduction, and other programs are going to get wiped out entirely. And I mean, I'm not sad to see some of these go. I'm really not. Now, according to The Blaze, and this was on, I think, Glenn Beck's radio show this morning, there are a couple of programs that are listed entirely for elimination, and these include the African Development Foundation, the National Endowment for the Arts, the National Endowment for the Humanities, Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars, and this is just huge. This is somebody going through the budget and taking out the programs that don't need to be there, the extraneous programs that we as a nation can no longer afford, that we couldn't afford in the first place. Now, we're going to see $1.4 billion go towards school choice, which is huge. I mean, we've discussed this on this program before with regard to Betsy DeVos and vouchers, and I just could not possibly be any more thrilled to see this huge step forward in school choice. I have 3 little boys of my own, and I would love to get vouchers so I can send them to the best private schools, and so I can send them to charter schools. I mean, that's the point, being able to choose as a parent how your children will be educated. I mean, this is a huge step forward for the conservative ideal here. And it's welcome to anyone like me who's a constitutional conservative who's been admittedly a little bit leery of the Trump administration so far. Now, I apologize if you hear a little bit of rumbling in the background. I live very close to a military installation, and I'm very proud of that fact. But it does occasionally make for a little bit of background noise on the podcast. So if you ever hear that, that's the sound of freedom, folks. Don't mind them. Okay? Now, we're going to go to a little break here. On the other side of the break, we're going to go to some audio from Senator John McCain and also from Senator Rand Paul on the floor of the Senate. Senator John McCain has directly stated that he feels that Senator Rand Paul is doing the work of Vladimir Putin and is in cahoots. Now, I added the in cahoots bit, but you're going to listen to the audio. You're going to see for yourself. Now, I attest and I assert that Senator John McCain has violated Rule 19 in a far more egregious fashion than Senator Elizabeth Warren did just 1 month ago during the confirmation of Senator, now Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. That's on the other side of this break. You're listening to the Holonet on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around. Hey everybody, Matt Holloway here. I wanted to take a moment to talk to you about an amazing group of Patriot entrepreneurs. Hot Pants LLC of Arizona is a welding, fabrication, and metallurgy company specializing in display weaponry and shields. A veteran-owned and operated company, they create interesting items inspired by their customers' ideas, as well as beautiful custom pieces of their own design. They're certified welders, credentialed by the Arizona Automotive Institute and Tidewater Community College, with a background experience from the U.S. military and the shipping industry. Hot Pants specializes in creating weaponry for cosplay, anime, video games, and the zombie apocalypse. No matter what your imagination can dream up, they can create a slew of interesting, creative weapons and shields ideal for any costume or outfit. If you're engrossed in the world of video games or role-playing, let them arm your character with unique, high-quality weapons. You won't be disappointed by their artistry and attention to detail. Give them a call today at 602-900-6856. That's 602-900-6856. Order online at www.hotpantsmetal.com. That's HOTTPANTS metal.com. Also there on Facebook at facebook.com/hotpantsllc.
You're listening to the Holonet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
Thanks for sticking with us. This is Matt Holloway. You're listening to the Holonet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. And it looks like the situation between Senators Rand Paul and John McCain is just getting uglier and uglier and uglier. And you know what? There's an extra wrinkle to this. I mentioned before the break that I feel that this statement from Senator McCain that I'm about to play for you is in clear violation of Rule 19 of the Rules of the Senate, and should have at least resulted in a censure of Senator McCain, at the very least, if not barring him to speak entirely on the matter of the NATO admission of the small European country of Montenegro, which is the question that was at hand, by the way. But get this. The junior senator from Arizona, Senator Jeff Flake, was the presiding officer of the Senate at the time. So, I hopped on Twitter, and I had to get a message out to Senator Flake with regard to this. And my question was very direct. My question was, well, my comment was actually, that perhaps I should publish an article here on Lanterns.buzz entitled, Holy Crap, Jeff Flake didn't call his overlord John McCain for a Rule 19 on Rand Paul. Hashtag Who's Your Daddy? And I think that question needs answering. I'm going to say it right now. What does Senator McCain have on Senator Jeff Flake that caused him to, number one, join the Gang of Eight after being a Tea Party sweetheart senator, and basically fall in line behind every big government progressive move that Republican establishment senators have made since he was elected, now culminating in shielding his senior senator, Senator McCain, from a clear violation of one of the biggest rules of decorum in the Senate. We're going to go ahead to this cut now from cspan.com of Senator John McCain discussing the admission of the nation Montenegro into NATO.
Mr. President, if there is objection, and I note the senator from Kentucky on the floor, I will say before I read this, if there is objection, you are achieving the objectives of Vladimir Putin. You're achieving the objectives of trying to dismember this small country that has already been the subject of attempted coup.
Now, I'm just going to pause it right there. This boils down to, if you don't do what I'm recommending, you're on the side of the Russians. You work for Putin. So you better do this, or you work for Putin. Come on, really?
I have no idea why anyone would object to this, except that I will say, if they object, they are now carrying out the desires and ambitions of Vladimir Putin, and I do not say that lightly.
Yes, you do. You say that extremely lightly. Because I tell you what, I'm going to go to the Facebook of Dr. Kelly Ward. Dr. Kelly Ward ran, albeit unsuccessfully, against Senator John McCain in the Republican primary for 2016. Now, she hopped onto Facebook fast, quick, and in a hurry when this all went down, and she made a really solid point with regard to Senator McCain's motivations behind pushing quite so hard for Montenegro's admission to NATO. Now, Dr. Ward pointed out that it is one of Senator McCain's penchants, if you will, to help out nations who are looking to purchase arms. I think this leads back to some campaign contributions, maybe, for the senator, maybe from Lockheed Martin. So if perhaps Montenegro were compelled to do away with their obsolete military equipment and buy all new military equipment that was compliant with and in line with NATO standards, potentially his bigger donors could stand to benefit from that. Is that possible? I don't think I can get my voice any higher. Maybe. Just a little bit. Bears some looking into. I'll let Senator McCain go on.
So, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that at a time to be determined by the majority leader in consultation with the Democratic leader, the Senate proceed to executive session to consider calendar number 1, Montenegro Treaty Document 114-12, that the treaty be considered as having advanced through the various parliamentary stages up to and including the presentation of the resolution of ratification, that any committee declarations be agreed to as applicable, that there be no amendments in order to the treaty or the resolution of ratification, that there be 2 hours for debate, equally divided in the usual form. Upon the use of yielding back of time, the Senate proceed to vote on the resolution, that any statements be printed in the record as if read, that if the resolution of ratification is agreed to, the motion to reconsider be considered, made, and laid upon the table, that the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action, that if the resolution is not agreed to, the treaty will be returned to the calendar, and that there be no motions or point of order in order, then a motion to reconsider, and then the Senate then resume legislative session.
And all that crap, kids, is why nobody watches C-SPAN. My apologies for that 30-some-odd seconds of procedural BS. But here's where it gets good.
Mr. President? Senator from Kentucky.
I object.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President, I note the senator from Kentucky leaving the floor without justification or any rationale for the action that he has just taken. That is really remarkable. That a senator blocking a treaty that is supported by the overwhelming number, perhaps 98 at least of his colleagues, would come to the floor and object and walk away. And walk away. The only conclusion you can draw when he walks away is he has no argument to be made. He has no justification for his objection to having a small nation be part of NATO that is under assault from the Russians. So I repeat again, the senator from Kentucky is now working for Vladimir Putin. I yield the floor. So
I think that's enough of a mic drop to qualify. Sorry, I just had to. That deserved a nice John Cena reference for as much of a mic drop as that was supposed to be for Senator John McCain. Accusing another senator in an open floor of working for the Russians. I mean, in the 1980s, this is like treasonable if we were in the Cold War. But oh, guess what? Guess what? Several notable sources have said we are now in what now? Cold War II. And we have been since 2014. And kids, that's not me throwing hyperbole out there, okay? These are actual real sources. Like Axios, like the Washington Post. Like Consequence. I mean, CNN, February 15th, said the Cold War returns to the high seas. Come on! So yes, saying that a senator of the United States works for Vladimir Putin, even in a turn of phrase that you think is going to be clever and impactful, is a violation of Rule 19. So, real quick, we're going to go to a quick clip from Morning Joe, where Senator Rand Paul's responded to John McCain, saying that he's unhinged and past his prime. This is on Morning Joe today on MSNBC.
All right, Rick, stick with us. We want to go to Capitol Hill. Senator from Kentucky, member of the Foreign Relations Committee, Rand Paul. Senator, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning.
We are going to get to health care in just a moment. I just want to get your reaction to the words Senator John McCain had for you from the Senate floor yesterday. Let's listen.
I note the senator from Kentucky leaving the floor without justification or any rationale for the action that he has just taken. That is really remarkable. He's now working for Vladimir Putin.
So, Senator, a little context around that. The vote was around putting Montenegro into NATO. What's your reaction to Senator McCain's characterization of your objection?
Well, you know, I think he makes a really, really strong case, for term limits. I think maybe he's past his prime. I think maybe he's gotten a little bit unhinged. I do think that when we talk about NATO, there can be a rational discussion about the pros and cons of expanding it. We currently have combat troops in about 6 nations. We have troops actively just stationed in probably a couple dozen others. We have a $20 trillion debt. And one of my favorite articles of the last couple of years was one that talked about the angry McCains. And if we put active troops and got involved in combat where McCain wants us to be, they put a little angry McCain on the globe, on the map, and it's virtually everywhere. So his foreign policy is something that would greatly endanger the United States, greatly overextend us, and there has to be the thought whether or not it's in our national interest to pledge to get involved in war if Montenegro has an altercation with anyone. There's also another argument is that when you ask the people of Montenegro, only about 40% or slightly less are actually in favor of this. They are close to Russia. They're close to being sort of like Ukraine in the transition from Europe to Asia. Perhaps it would be good to be like Switzerland and be more neutral and trade with both. So there's a lot of considerations, but to call someone somehow an enemy of the state or a traitor might be considered by most reasonable people to be a little over the top.
Well, Senator, you just...
Now, I just want to point out here that this is more than a little over the top. This is a clear violation of the Senate rules that Senator Elizabeth Warren, rightly, I'm going to add, rightly, got lambasted for a month ago. So, what does this come down to? Is it that there's an R next to your name, so you get to blast anybody you feel like in the middle of the Senate floor? Or is it, like I said, a case of Jeff Flake knowing who his daddy is and not wanting to call on the carpet his senior senator from the state of Arizona? Not sure. Either way, my state just looked really crappy on C-SPAN and in the political world at large for two reasons. One, our senior senator seems to be completely detached from reality. Number two, our junior senator appears to be a beaten wuss, afraid to stand up to his superior. So, way to go to the senatorial delegation from Arizona, making us look great here in the Grand Canyon state. Good God. Now, I'm done ranting and raving about how I massively disapprove of the senatorial delegation from the state of Arizona. Maybe next week I'll find something silly that our House representatives have done. I'll lay into them a little bit, and we'll just go on about how the Republican representation from my state doesn't really represent conservatives very much anymore. I digress. To give you a little bit of context, I know not everybody has Google Earth open in front of them. Montenegro is a previous component nation of Yugoslavia, and prior to that was a component nation of the Ottoman Empire up until its collapse subsequent to World War I. So Montenegro is right there with Bosnia-Herzegovina, and it actually borders them. It also borders Serbia, so it's a relatively unstable and fractious area of the globe, popularly referred to as the Balkans. This is where the phrase balkanization comes from, when it describes an area that's torn apart by sectarian violence, which I earnestly hope is not our country in 10 years. So, Senator Rand Paul raises some significant concerns here about Montenegro. Number one, that 40% of the people of Montenegro aren't really down with the whole concept of, it was either 40 or 60%, aren't really down with the concept of joining NATO, mainly because they have long traditional ties to Russia, given the fact that they are a fairly Slavic country and very, very much a Eastern European country, an Eastern Bloc country, where you're at the crossroads there in that area of the Balkans between Europe and in between Asia, really where two cultures have always had just a little bit of trouble merging. There's been a lot of war, a lot of sectarian violence, a lot of hatred. We're talking about, you're right next to Bosnia and Herzegovina, and our good old buddy Slobodan Milosevic, who liked to do a little trick called ethnic cleansing that wiped out several thousands of people and pulled the United States and our NATO allies into a protracted military action there, where my wife's cousin actually served honorably in the U.S. Army. A little shout out to him there. But do we want to have one more country, one more notch in our bedpost, as it were, when it comes to NATO, just to poke Russia a little harder, just to poke the bear a little bit more, give us one more country that we need to spread our defensive lines out over? Big debacle going on right now about us establishing an anti-missile defense system in Poland, the same as we have in Romania. Russia considers that a big threat. In fact, they delivered several short-range nuclear ballistic missiles to Kaliningrad, which is a Russian exclave, a Russian area that's outside of normal mainland Russia. It's actually surrounded by Poland on all sides, and also by, I believe, on the map, it's going to be either Estonia or one of the smaller three nations there that were previously Soviet. I'm going to have to pull up Google Maps now so I don't sound like an idiot. All right, let me see here. Yeah, Kaliningrad is on the Baltic coast, and it's actually surrounded on all sides by other nations. It's what's called an exclave, and it's bordered by Poland and Lithuania, so it's not connected to the rest of Russia at all. But the Russian Navy transported nuclear ballistic missiles there just to prove a point to Poland and to anyone else who wants to get uppity in the region. Our allies there, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Belarus, all very, very nervous at this moment from a resurgent Russia. And now Senator McCain wants us to stretch that protective blanket just a little further out to the small European nation of Montenegro, which borders Bosnia-Herzegovina, Serbia, Kosovo, and Albania. Friendly neighborhood. A lot of pro-American sentiment there. Not sure that this is something we should be involving ourselves in right now. But we're going to have to come back to that on the other side of this break. I'm Matt Holloway. You're listening to the Holonet Podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. We'll be back.
Lanterns authorization code accepted. Logging in. Your access to the HoloNet has been approved. Please stand by.
Hey everyone, this is Matt Holloway, and I hope you're enjoying our podcast so far. It's been exciting putting this together for you, and I'm looking forward to many more to come. I did want to let you know that in setting up the HoloNet and getting everything launched here, we've gone ahead and set up a page on Patreon.com. Now, if you haven't heard of Patreon, Patreon is a website that's similar to other crowdfunding sources that allows you to support on a month-to-month basis those sources, those artists, and those groups that you really care about and that you're passionate about. And I hope that we can ignite passion in a lot of people to become more involved in the political process, and also to become involved in the conversation and to keep that political dialogue alive. So I'd like to humbly ask you today to consider becoming a patron of the HoloNet on Patreon.com, and you can access that at Patreon.com/theholonet. We have various levels of patronage. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month, which unlocks exclusive content for the Patreon community, such as a feed of patron-only content. Then you have a $5 option, which gives you behind-the-scenes access to blog about the different inspirations that we have. It'll give you access to patrons-only polling. And then we have a $10 option, which gives you a signed digital poster plus everything else. $20 option, which gives you name in the credits on the site, and all other rewards. And we even have a segment sponsor package available on Patreon, which is $125 a month, which entitles you and your business to a 60-second ad as a segment sponsor during the podcast, of course, subject to content approval. So if you would like to become a patron of the HoloNet, we would be greatly thankful to you, and it's going to go toward a solid cause of generating this sort of millennial constitutional conservative content that is so lacking in our media today. So thank you for your time, for your consideration, and for being a part of the HoloNet. Here we hold the line against the night, and the millennial conservative resistance begins here.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
Welcome back. You're listening to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. I'm Matt Holloway. Do you sing your kids to sleep? if you have kids. My wife and I do. When my wife sings my oldest son to sleep, she's old-fashioned, so she sings a song from Mary Poppins. And I'd play it for you, but I'm pretty sure that somebody at Lanterns would have a small stroke pertaining to the trademarks and copyrights and all that. But I'm just going to quote the song a little bit because I feel that it bears heavily on what we as constitutional conservatives and the millennial conservative resistance need to do as we enter into, really in earnest, the Trump presidency. Stay awake. Don't rest your head. Don't lie down upon your bed. While the moon drifts in the skies, stay awake, don't close your eyes. Though the world's fast asleep, though your pillow is soft and deep, you're not sleepy as you seem. Stay awake, don't nod and dream. Now, when Julie Andrews, Mary Poppins, sings this to the children, to the Banks children, she's being sarcastic, obviously. She wants them to go to sleep. Same thing with my wife. She doesn't want my oldest Jack to stay up all night. She wants the kid to go to sleep. But that song got me thinking. What our government wants, and this includes President Trump to a certain extent, and I'm not never Trump. I've told you guys many times I was a Ted Cruz supporter at the beginning, but he's the president we got, so he's the president we need to support. But the government as a whole, including President Trump and especially some elements of Congress, want very, very badly for you to just roll over and snuggle up into that pillow and fall back asleep for another 4 or 8 years and say, "Oh, it's okay. Trump's got it. Trump's good. Make America great again. He's good. I can just relax now. Everybody in D.C.'s got my back." It's not true, guys. It's not true. Not in the least. I have no doubt that there are many on the Hill whose motives are pure and whose motivations are noble. President Donald Trump's budget today showed us that he may be listening to the right people. He may be on the right track. Some of these ideas are his own, I'm sure. But what executives like President Trump tend to do is they tend to surround themselves with very smart people. And this is one of the things that he ran on, is that he would surround himself with the best people, the best advisors who would come up with these plans. And this is what a CEO does. This is what the presidency has been missing. We've had a lot of presidents who decided they were going to just go this course and damn everybody else. I hope I can say that. We're just going to go this way. Like President Barack Obama with the Affordable Care Act and with Lead from Behind. I'm just going to go my path. But it says something. It says something about a different style of leadership when a president surrounds themselves with who they feel are the most qualified and who are on the same path, generally speaking, as their policy and as their goals, and then they execute on the advice that they're given. And that's something encouraging that I think I'm seeing out of the Trump White House right now. What I'm seeing that's a shade discouraging, and I'm going to wait for the Tucker Carlson exclusive on this one, is that both the Senate and House Intelligence Committees have soundly struck down President Trump's notion that he was listened in on, that he was wiretapped prior to the election by the Obama administration. They said that there's no evidence of this. Where's your proof? So I'm, like everybody else, waiting with bated breath on this one to see if it winds up being a running, jumping faceplant for the president, or if it bears out that there is some evidence to that fact. I mean, some people have been saying it was a British element, under direct orders of the President of the United States, Barack Obama, who executed this wiretap or this FISA inquiry, access to the NSA systems. But we're going to have to wait to find out. Obamacare Light, something I'm not thrilled with. There's a lot of negotiating that's left to do. There's a Senate plan, there's a House plan. They're very different. We covered this at a little bit more length last week with Dean on the show, and that was a fun conversation going back and forth. Made the hour just kind of fly. I'm not too sure about that. I want the clean repeal. I want the bill of goods that I've been sold for the last 6 years. I want that clean repeal. I want Obamacare gone. Every last stitch, scrap, jot, and tittle. And then we start from new. Design something from the ground up that is conservative and that is good for everyone. Of course, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You have a grandfather provision that's thrown in there in order to make it so that you don't have several million people just tossed off of their health insurance overnight. You got to downgrade it. You got to have a glide path. But again, this remains to be seen. All things said and told, what I have to urge you to do, what I'm begging and pleading with tears in my eyes. I can't cry on command, unlike some hosts. I'm sorry, I just can't do it. Sorry, Glenn. I had to throw it out there. Love Glenn Beck, big fan of him, but just had to put that jibe in. As I said, though, tears in my eyes, I implore you, my fellow conservatives, stay awake. Don't nod and dream. Stay awake. Don't nod and dream. We can't afford to. There's too much at stake. I'm hoping for a lot from a fully Republican Congress, from a Republican House and a Republican-controlled Senate, from a 4-4 Supreme Court, where we might actually get some decent judgments out there, from a Republican president. But stay awake. Don't nod and dream. I would really love to see massive income tax reform. I'd love to wake up tomorrow and find out that they've enacted a 10% flat tax. But that would qualify as a dream, folks. We need to concentrate on the serious business of governance. The serious business of undoing 8 years of toxic policy, of life-choking regulation. And what I see so far is encouraging. But we must stay awake. We must continue to exert the pressure on Congress that we have for the past 6 years, unceasingly, without fail and without even a second guess. We can't trust them and leave them to their own devices. Politics, political power in general, is like fire. It's powerful. But the second you turn your back on it, you get burned. Let's not get burned again. Now we're going to take a little break here. When we come back, we're going to have a quick little segment that I've invented, that I've come up with, that I think you're really going to enjoy. It's going to be a Holonet First on the other side of this break. You're listening to the Holonet Podcast. I'm Matt Holloway on Lanterns Media Network.
You are listening to the Lanterns Radio Network, where Americans come together to illuminate the truth, Turn it up loud and proud until the knob breaks off. Lanterns, illuminating the truth.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
All right, folks, I'm Matt Holloway. This is the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. And now I want to introduce to you our brand new segment. I'm going to try to have this every week, and we're going to call it, Why the Hell Is This News? This is going to be centered around those news stories where you just gawk at it for a second and say, my God, why the hell is this news? And the first one we're going to start with is this. Okay, and as Peter Griffin said, who the hell cares? Here's the story. Okay, Nike has released, and this is from, this started a couple days ago, 3 days ago, and now it's still rolling. I mean, the ball's still rolling on this. Nike has released a sports hijab for Muslim women. Okay? So this is a slimmer version of the hijab that can be worn on the head and tucked under the shirt. And you pull this up on Google, and there's page after page after page of stories regarding this. And I mean, we're talking about big sources. NBC Chicago, Black America Web, The Star, India Times, Seattle Times, Indy 100 for The Independent. I mean, at least 10 pages on Google. And the independent.co.uk, I love this one. Nike hijab enrages right-wing joggers. Quote, I will never buy another Nike. From the independent.co.uk. Who in the hell cares? Alright? This doesn't come down to whether or not you like the Muslim faith. This doesn't come down to whether or not you feel that the wearing of the hijab or the niqab or any of the other Muslim female accoutrements are oppressive to women. What this comes down to is capitalism. Now, if I'm Nike, if I'm on the Nike board, and I know that in Middle Eastern countries, sorry about that, I know that in Middle Eastern nations that have recently kind of opened up to women, that previously women didn't have the ability to compete in sports, that now there's a market for Muslim sportswear. So I'm going to come out with a hijab with the Nike swoosh on the side. It's a little bit sleeker and works better for sporting events. Who the hell cares? Why is this a thing? I mean, it's not even set to hit the market until 2018. It made a little bit of a splash at the Olympics because it was designed and tested by figure skater Zara Lari and weightlifter Amna Al-Haddad, and it's a piece of high performance sportswear that's designed to help Muslim women compete. Now think about this here. If you've ever traveled to the Middle East, and admittedly, disclaimer here, I haven't, but where I grew up in New Jersey, I grew up with a lot of Muslim people who came from Egypt, who came from Pakistan, who came from various different Muslim nations. And there were girls in my high school that wore the hijab, or that wore a niqab. Okay? Would they have probably preferred this in gym class? They probably would have. And many of the Muslim women who I've met personally, who wear the hijab or the niqab, they prefer to. This is their choice. Especially given that they live in the United States where they have a choice. Granted, some countries like Iran, Saudi Arabia, not so much with the whole choice having thing. And I'm not going to turn this into a criticism of Islam as a religion, which I would argue is a religion badly in need of a reformation. Somebody call up the Islamic Martin Luther and have him nail a couple of demands on the front of the mosque door, okay? They need a Lutheran... They basically need the Muslim equivalent of Lutheranism. But I digress. This is a non-story. This is, as Ted Cruz called another non-story a couple weeks ago, this is a nothing burger, all right? If I was having a slow news day, I wouldn't insult my audience with this crap. Okay? So this is what this entire segment is going to be about going forward. Why the hell is this news? There was a market for a hijab that Muslim women could wear while they play soccer, or while they lift weights, or while they figure skate. So Nike made it. And they're going to sell it in 2018. So why does that call for a boycott of Nike? So some Twitter quotes here. I will never buy anything Nike again. Their greed for dollars is so great, now accommodating Muslims. No Sharia law in America. I agree with you there. No Sharia law in America. However, if a Muslim woman decides on her own to wear a hijab, I really don't give a flying crap. I don't care. Thomas Jefferson said, if it neither breaks my leg nor picks my pocket, what difference does it make to me? I don't care. I'm getting myself tired. Oh, here we go. Hashtag Nike cashing in on the subjugation, domination, and oppression of women. I will never buy another Nike product again. Ooh. Goodness gracious. So this has just turned into just a bombshell, just a magnet of all the criticisms of Islam as a religion. And you know what? As I've said, for your fundamentalist Islamist groups like ISIS, like Iran, like the Taliban, who enforce the most brutal aspects of Sharia law, yeah, there's a lot to criticize. Heck, for Saudi Arabia, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, thief get his hands chopped off. There's a lot to criticize there. You're going to criticize headwear? Really? What if Nike came out with a yarmulke? What if Nike came out with a habit for nuns to wear? So if you're like Whoopi Goldberg and you're a nun who also plays basketball. Just want you to think about it, folks. Keep your eye on the ball. We have so much to worry about right now. We have Obamacare Light. We have a groundbreaking new budget from President Trump. We have Russian aggression. We have China trying to take over the South China Sea. We have Rodrigo Duterte, the president of the Philippines, who is saber-rattling with China. We have the Japanese so bugged out that they built the first aircraft carrier in the Japanese Navy since World War II, the JNS Izumo, which is a helicopter destroyer. You can't see me making air quotes here, but it's a friggin' aircraft carrier. Okay? That's how freaked out the world is right now. People are saying we're verging on World War III and we're already in Cold War II. We're just too dumb to figure it out. And the Independent and every other news element in the world is so desperate to feed the beast that they're throwing you crap stories about a Nike hijab. Really? Let's keep our eye on the ball here, folks. That's what I'm here to help you do. Part of the millennial conservative resistance, where we stand up for ourselves and we stand up for each other. And it calls them like it sees them. This is just naked avarice going for clicks. Alright, folks. Well, that about brings it to a close for this week. It's been a wild ride. It's been a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it too. I'm Matt Holloway. You're listening to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Please like and share the show. Feel free to give us your comments. You can listen on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, Play.fm, and of course, as always, on Lanterns.buzz and theholonet.blogspot.com. I'm Matt Holloway. Good night, and God bless.